gang. Says the disembodied voice. Oh,
Hello, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, it's just my audio said it said audio not working for
Oh,
some
it's still
reason.
doing that,
So,
isn't it? It's like,
yeah.
hi, Sarah. Like, what is up with that anyway? Unbelievable.
Dr. McKay,
Yes.
did you get my emails?
Um, are they
I sent,
recent? It's been a
yeah,
couple days. Let me look. I might
okay,
not have yet.
okay. Yeah, no, I sent you, it's only been a couple days. I
Okay.
was just making sure that I'm just trying to get back on track. And I thought, can we maybe talk after class for 2 minutes
Oh,
quickly?
yeah, no problem.
Great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
I've got two kids here, one with an ear infection and the other one threw up. So
Oh no.
it's been, I'm telling you, it's like this last year, I think it's because my littlest was a COVID baby and wasn't in daycare or anything and so now after a year in preschool has gotten everything she didn't get before
Mm-hmm.
because it has been nonstop. And it's a miracle. I only got one sinus infection and I haven't gotten, knock on wood, anything else. But I'm like between that and the conference, like I'm ready to curl into a ball in the corner and just cry myself to sleep. So
Yeah, don't do that.
no.
No. So, but spring break is coming, so that will hopefully be some help.
That is already planned out. Everybody's going to school but me. So I will
Yeah.
have plenty of time.
Yeah. And here's Danielle's autopilot. I don't know if Danielle is with it or not.
I don't either. Actually, I
We'll
could
see.
text her though.
Okay. Um, and Nicole, did you blue your hair or did we just not see it before?
No, so ironically enough, I always keep my hair up in a bun and no one ever realizes it, but this is fading out.
Mm.
So I originally dyed my hair purple and green almost 2 years ago, and I used Splat box dye, and I didn't know that Splat contains the same chemicals as furniture dye or textile dye,
Oh
which
my.
is why it's the worst hair dye to ever use because it doesn't come out. It has to kind of grow out.
Mm.
I've tried talking to salon people. They're like, there's nothing I can do but let it grow out. So it's fading into blue and purple. So it
Yeah.
just won't. This is why my roots are all messed
Mm.
up because I'm trying to let the hair grow out so I can cut it off. I was
Well,
going through a rebel
I kind
phase.
of like that blue, you know.
It, the
I like
blue
the
was
multi-tone thing.
originally it was like a turquoise green type of thing, and now it's
Mm.
blue. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
See, it
when
matches
I
my color today.
yeah.
I need
when
that color.
when I took Casey's class, they had asked me if I had dyed my hair for trans visibility pride because I had the trans
Mm.
colors in my hair.
Yeah.
Like I hadn't thought of it like that, but I am an ally, so why
There
not?
you go. That would be
Yeah.
cool. And hi, Marissa and Renee and other Sarah. So good to see you all. We'll
But
give a couple
yeah.
minutes to
Hello.
see who wanders in. Um, did anybody try the mid-semester feedback form yet? Is it
I
working
did.
okay?
Yeah. Hmm.
Yay.
Yeah, it
Thank
works
goodness.
fine.
Cool. Um, I'm I'm still trying to get used to the survey function in Blackboard. So I'm always
Mhm.
nervous. But rather than go out and make a Google survey and then give you a link to a Google survey, blah blah blah, I'm trying to come to grips with Blackboard.
No, it's fine.
Good, very good. Um, it's a good thing that spring break's coming up.
Yeah.
Need some time to get caught up and
Yes.
just sort of process.
Hmm.
I'll miss you guys though. But so I figure you need a week off too. So
So we will be meeting this Sunday, correct?
Yes, we're gonna meet
Okay.
on the 10th. And that'll be
Okay.
like end of this week. And then we will not do next week at all, either the Thursday or the Sunday. So, and then we'll go
Okay.
Thursday and Sunday following. So,
All
yep,
right.
yeah, and I suspected a lot of people might want to come today rather than Sunday so that they can kind of start the break kind of thing early. Oh, now what happened to KQ? Yikes. Well, let's see. What do we want for a what's a good icebreaker? Well, we had an employee appreciation thing on campus today, and it was this traveling barista thing. So this couple of people who go around and set up like a coffee bar on campus or in your place of employment or whatever. And so there was coffee and there was treats. And so the treat options were Rice Krispie bars, chocolate chip cookies, dark chocolate salted cookies, or banana bread with dark chocolate. So, and if you're gluten intolerant, well, I guess you could do the rice. Well, can you do the Rice Krispies if you're gluten intolerant, or do Rice
I don't
Krispies
know.
have gluten in them?
Oh no.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know about Rice Krispies. Um, but and I ought to be able to do, but I think I have to set it up ahead of time. I was gonna say I ought to be able to do a poll. Um, but I think I would have to make it ahead. And I did not do that. So that's a bummer. So we'll just have to do an old-fashioned poll. So what would you pick? Rice Krispie bars, regular chocolate chip cookies, salted dark chocolate chip cookies, or banana bread with dark chocolate. Okay, those are your options. Those are the only options you get. So we get a salted dark chocolate. We get 2 for that. Anybody for Rice Krispie bars? No, not interested. Regular chocolate chip cookies, banana bread with chocolate. Okay, so what else would you have wanted for everybody who did not want one of those? Fruit.
Mm,
Fruit.
not sure.
Okay. I'm just looking, there's like something up there and I don't know what that's doing, but I think it's the autopilot sort of talking about stuff and I just don't know what it's doing. Okay, I'm gonna try to actually get out of the chat without getting out of the meeting. There, yay, I'm back. Okay, good. So fruit. Um, anything else that would be good?
Mm,
Bagels,
mm,
something more savory but still gluteny, right?
mm.
Because all of those things were fairly sweet. So,
Yeah.
or maybe little mini quiches,
Corn.
cornbread. Oh yes, cornbread all the time. I love cornbread too. Okay, now
Or maybe
last
like a
time,
croissant.
here's a question on the cornbread thing. With sugar or without sugar? No sugar?
No, my favorite cornbread I've had like cheddar and like jalapenos and stuff in it, and then it was like I don't know if fried or sauteed. It was like in a skillet. It was like so
Oh
savory
yeah,
cornbread
skillet
all the way.
cornbread. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
almost like
skillet.
almost like corn pancakes type of
Yeah.
thing.
That's
Yeah.
the
Anybody else for the no sugar in the cornbread? Yeah, some. And the reason I ask is because um I don't know if you guys know Patricia in the program, but she was taking this last time around, and she's from Texas originally, and we just went round and round and round and round and round about how horrible it was that we New Englanders want to put sugar in our cornbread. And I'm like, I grew up that way. She's like,
So did I. I like it. I just like it better without.
no.
I like
Interesting.
the sweet cornbread. I like it as like a dessert. I think it's good.
Yeah, well, and then I put honey on it too, so that just makes it
Ooh,
worse.
that sounds good.
Oh
What
yeah,
about
Worse for
cornbread
you,
with
but
butter and honey on it.
with honey? Yeah, I'm gonna try that.
what about the
Yeah.
corn? Does anyone
Hmm?
put like real corn inside their cornbread mix? Because I know like that's a southern thing too.
Added
Mhm.
that.
Like
Yeah.
kernels.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which you could also do with the jalapeno and cheddar KQ, right? Like you can put the corn in it too. Um, yeah, and and there's like sugar, and then um, I have I have a cornbread recipe that I think has maple syrup in it for the sweetener. So you can vary the sweetener, and that definitely gives it different qualities too. Um, so these people had lots of options of things they could offer, even if it was just in the cornbread realm, right? Which kind of reminds me, given this cornbread discussion, about 2 or 3 or 4, I lose track of time, years ago, there was um there's a really big issue with um US companies, like I think they were exporting corn into Mexico and undercutting the Mexican farmers who had been doing it like traditionally, and that was like their livelihood for longest time, and really disrupting that market, um, which is partly a segue into, as we go into module 4 now, then we have lots of opportunities to be thinking about the international economy of food and food movement and stuff like that too. Which we've touched on here and there for sure, but we have been spending a lot of time thinking about the US and our economy and our our populations and things like that. So it's nice. Particularly, and I think it's just a recommended book, which kind of breaks my heart, but at some point I had to try to give you a break. But the Women Working the NAFTA Food Chain book is like, I love it. I just love that book. And it really, one of the things I love about it is how it talks about women's roles internationally as foods move across the border, into the US and even into Canada and stuff like that. So if you're particularly interested in international stuff, that's maybe a good resource to prioritize taking a look at sometime. So what do we think? How are we doing? What's coming up for you so far in this module? There's a lot going on, so. I
I
know a
was
lot of
just reading
Go ahead.
hi. Oh, sorry. I was
Yeah.
just reading one of the articles right before class is called the A Local Answer to a Global Mess: Women's Innovations to Secure Their Livelihoods.
Mm-hmm.
And they were talking about the Terminator seed and how they were like developed a genetic technique that prevents seeds from germinating when replanted. And it reminded me of one of the readings about like an indigenous culture, how like indigenous culture, big thing right now is like getting all the seeds from like their traditional plants. And I'm like, that is so scary that like the two of those things are going on like currently at the same time. And it just is like so wild that there's just such different like demands and such different needs. Like people have such different points of view on it.
Mhm.
I thought that was kind of crazy.
And that too is a global thing. Vandana Shiva's work in India is very involved in seed saving and cultivating traditional seeds and allowing farmers to save their seeds and carry things over generationally. And there's been so much negative effect on the farmers in India from these big industrial operations bringing in seeds and tying them to their livelihood being involved with partaking of that. And Vandana Shiva has really done a lot to push back against that. And Winona LaDuke has done a lot of that work here in the US around it. So it is a very, very important juxtaposition. And I'm glad you sort of saw that tension of those two side by side. You can probably guess I'm not a big fan of the Terminator seeds thing.
I had never heard of them before, so I was just surprised. I guess I wasn't really surprised because I feel like if the government can control something like that, they're going to. So, but I just didn't know that they could like genetically modify seeds so that they like are unable to reproduce again. So, crazy.
Yep. Yeah, were other people familiar with that thing that's ever happened? Yeah. Yes, pretty much the absolute opposite. Yeah. And the idea again that it keeps farmers dependent on these big agro-industrial organizations like Monsanto, which is now owned by who? Who owns Monsanto now? Bayer. The friendly people that bring you children's aspirin bought Monsanto. Yeah. So, which is another whole little soapbox of mine. So yeah, good reading there.
Can you go into that just a little bit, the Monsanto thing? I'm just curious. It just sparked my interest.
Yeah, well, so Monsanto sells chemicals, and that's part of why they are a fit with the industrial complex of Bayer, because Bayer is really about chemicals. And so, of course, one of the things that Monsanto sells is Roundup, which I can never remember exactly what the technical name for that is. Something glyphosate. What is it? Huh? Glyphosate. There we go. Impronounceable long word. And so they have been genetically engineering seeds to be resistant to Roundup. So that what you can do is you can plant these seeds and then you can spray all the fields with lots of Roundup and it'll kill the weeds, but it won't kill the plants that you want to grow. Okay. So one of the concerns is that those will cross-pollinate with natural species if they're in fields that are close by to the regular ones. And, of course, Monsanto is doing that because they want to sell farmers lots and lots of Roundup and stuff. So they've kind of got into the seed business because of the chemical business. Yeah. So, and then people don't want, if companies genetically engineer seeds, they don't want people to be able to replicate those for free. They want them to keep buying them from them and then buy the Roundup to put on them. And so hence the Terminator thing. Yeah.
It's so gross.
Yeah.
Well, and
Now,
Monsanto was putting a lot of small farms out of business that way because
Mhm.
they were essentially going after them for stealing their products because of cross-pollination that happened naturally.
Yeah. So both small farms and organic farms are super concerned about this, because it basically would wreck your organics. Um, and indeed, smaller farms get targeted for this. So yeah,
So now they can sicken people with their chemicals and then solve the problem with their pharmaceuticals all under one big canopy. This is
there you
genius
go.
marketing.
So, and of course, do we remember what some of Bayer's early chemicals were? Poisonous gases in World War II. Yeah. So Bayer has a really interesting history.
Wait, how do you spell the Bear company?
Bayer.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah. Like Bayer aspirin.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's probably what most people know them best for is their aspirin. But they do a lot of other pharma stuff for sure. So interesting. And we've just come off the food and health module, right? So it's sort of interesting seeing that kind of segue here now about how these things all get enmeshed with one another. The industrial complex of providing seeds and chemicals and farming and all of that, and then the health implications and the pharmaceutical companies, which end up being entwined with all these other things. It is kind of
Don't the chemicals affect the water?
Yeah, and did you see the case a few years ago where somebody did win a really big settlement for Roundup causing cancer and stuff? And I think that there's a lot of concern about it for agricultural workers because of the direct exposure, but there's also concern about like runoff and that sort of thing, and things getting, let's go back to the water module, right? Getting into the groundwater and getting into rivers and things, potential impacts on wildlife and stuff like that too.
Yeah.
So yeah, water runs everywhere. Once something gets into water, we're in trouble.
Well, and then that just
This is
circles
not a
back to the
cheerful monocle.
geographical,
Huh?
like that just connects back to the geographical location of many of the industrial farms to being adjacent to lower income communities, rural communities that are impoverished and people who don't have access or not education necessarily about these potential risks and the ways to solve them, solve the problems.
And in some cases it may be the only game in town too. It's not like there may always be a lot of great alternatives for what to do, or jobs or work or livelihoods or things like that, without leaving. And then we end up with only big industrial agriculture farms, and people can't afford to stay on their family farms. Here's some good news of the week now, because this can be a very depressing module. So I have to share good news with you when I find it. One of our local farms that we support pretty much every month has actually been farming on their family's property, and they're getting ready to buy their own farm in the same town. So that's super exciting. So they're expanding their operations, and they're going to have their own piece of land to work on, as well as the family land that they've been working on. So that is so cool. Yeah, I am so happy. It's like, yay. So, so there's some good news. What else?
The simple what was it like the simple solution to farming article. It for me it we learned at least in Alabama, like so much of that was like built into our like what we learned about like growing up. Like it was all like George Washington Carver and like we do the soybeans and then we do the cotton and like make sure like the fertilizer stays rich. So it's like wild that it's been vastly ignored and like now it's like, oh wow, like a wild concept. Like we rotate the crops and like keep an eye on the crops and don't just do the same thing year in year out and drain the soil. So it felt very like yes, duh, but also like of course people aren't doing that because it's not as profitable.
Hmm. And you might have to really sort of rethink markets, right? Like suddenly now this year you're into this market and that's not the market you're used to dealing with. You're used to dealing with this other market. Um, and farmers are not necessarily marketers, right? They're farmers. And so I think just that can be a little bit difficult. Um, and again, the companies that want to sell you all of the inputs to the process each year want to provide you with solutions so that you don't have to do crop rotation and things like that and deal with that potential for market disruption and that sort of thing. And some things being more profitable and some things being less profitable. It's like, nope, we'll just sell you a chemical solution. So that has sort of like selling convenience to consumers, that has been sold to farmers as solutions. And places like my little local farm are fighting back. But yes, it's amazing like how much parallel um there is to that rediscovery of knowledge of how to do things with the indigenous rediscovery of their knowledge of their food ways and care for the land and things that were taken away from them. It's I don't think it's accidental that all of this is happening in parallel. I would say, perhaps engendered by the beginning of Earth Day and, Rachel Carson's work on environmental awareness and all of the stuff in the 70s that really started raising people's awareness. Not everybody's, because a lot of people are still completely enmeshed in the industrial food system. But, making some progress in those directions. So did anybody else get a chance to look at that yet? That one?
Yeah, I wanted to say, like, I think, well, I know that it's amazing that we have this class here in our program. But the point of that New York Times article that's like, not using chemicals or using chemicals more as like as needed instead of as a given, um, it can't happen because no one knows about it. And why aren't we incorporating these types of like food courses into, I said this about, my first semester in the program about other women's and gender subjects, but especially this one, like every human eats. So like, why aren't we kind of getting the word out young in like the first year? The freshman experience should include something like this as a way to resist and as a way to combat these issues that are pervading our society. I don't know, it just seems so common sense, and that we should probably learn more sustainable processes and better eating as part of our education to becoming adults, right?
Yeah.
Especially for
I know
ag students.
I'm like preaching to the choir here, but
well, and I was gonna say, and why not high school? and maybe middle school. And Renee may have some thoughts on that, given her work with that age of kids. There here and there scattered throughout the course, we have occasionally have articles about bringing this awareness into pre-K through 12 school systems and with those kids. But do you have any thoughts on that, Renee?
Hmm. You watched a movie called McFarlane. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of McFarlane with Kevin Costner. It was about migrant families, and it's actually based on a true story. I don't remember all the details, but Kevin Costner goes into this town, and he's a coach, and he has a number of problems where he loses different jobs. So it's kind of, they feel like he's never going to succeed. But these migrant families are very open to him, and they take him into his home, and he's starting to see how they live. And they're living like in these tenement houses. And at one point, there wasn't enough money for them to live. So these high school kids would have to work before they went to school, and then their families would too. So at one point, they agreed that they would spray chemicals, and they didn't realize how it was going to affect their skin. And I remember there was a whole discussion with the students about what was going on, and you should look at the movie if you get a chance.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
we did that in the 7th grade.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure they got into it because there was a sports component, but they did talk about all the other pieces.
It wasn't about the soccer kids, was it?
No, they
Kids
were track. They
track?
ran track.
Okay. Because there was a really good book, and I can't remember the name of it, about this community that there were a lot of immigrants that came in um from Africa, I think. Maybe other places, but I think particularly Africa. And the town like really rejected them.
Okay.
But then they formed like a soccer league or something, or they started playing soccer, and it really sort of transformed. Like that became the impetus to transform all kinds of community relations and things,
Mm-hmm.
in marvelous ways. It is amazing how much kids are still working in agriculture. And there's, I think it was just this last week, I saw something about a bill that was being introduced. I see a kid somewhere, um, federally, to try to combat um, all the minors that are being, and I mean like less than 16 years old, less than 14 years old, that are being used on farms, sometimes in meat processing, like cleaning meat processing machinery and stuff like that. Like doing some work with dangerous machinery and everything. And trying and it largely being migrant children, whose
Mm-hmm.
parents may not understand the labor laws and rights, or who are just desperate for their family to have the money from having their kids working and everything. So there's still a ton of this going on that we don't even hear about necessarily. So
Well, isn't the flip side of that though? I couldn't even tell you where it was, but one of the earlier readings about the like cultural implications for not migrant, immigrant farmers who had always shared labor. And so like you come work my farm and then I'll come work yours. And like it was a family affair. And then a lot of these small farmers essentially were completely shut down because the legislation came in and said you can't have your cousin, brother, daughter, whoever working here, friend without insurance and all these other policies and things in place that they were completely unfamiliar with. And so then they were getting heavily fined and such. And so it's like this interesting balance of like allowing cultural practice to play out, but also protecting minors from exploitation.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think that's been true in the restaurant industry too. You know, that we may actually have way back in module 1 somewhere, maybe in when we were talking about culture, we might have had some readings about you know, kids' experiences in their families' restaurants growing up. Um, I used to hang out in my father's restaurants when I was way too young to be doing that, and I'm sure it was illegal. And I was like, you know, playing around with food prep and everything in ways that I probably shouldn't have been doing. But you don't think of it as a kid, right? You just think of it as fun and being involved and all of that
Yeah.
sort of thing. And you know, thankfully nothing bad happened, but it
Well,
can.
every once in a while, you'll see something in the paper about a restaurant where they had a minor doing some work in the restaurant, which they were not supposed to be having them do. And there
Mhm.
was going to be a fine.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's an interesting place where cultural norms come up against our sort of larger societal norms and laws that we've put in place around it, and sort of how do you navigate those tensions. um I just went to I went to one of my faculty colleagues classes, which is an early childhood education class, last night online, and they were talking about the Emilio Reggio schools, and I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but they originated in Italy, and it's a very interesting way of approaching education. Um, and I don't know everything about it, so I cannot say it at all. But they kind of what came out in the discussion last night after watching a couple of films about this school in Italy, which is where it started. Um, a lot of the students here said that they were amazed at these little like 5-year-old kids, um, and you know how they would like serve themselves food with real like plates and cups, not sippy cups, like actual open cups, and real knives and forks, and you know that they were perfectly capable of like eating with normal implements and not making a mess, and how different that was from like the schools where they're working, and how they deal with the kids. Sarah, are you
Yeah,
waving in?
I've had this issue for a little bit. I know, sorry to the other people who've heard me in the other classes talk about it, but yeah, I mean, my daughter has ADHD. I have it. It doesn't diminish our intelligence in the least. It just means that our reward system for learning is different, you know? And so what works better for us would be more of like a, you know, Reggio Emilia or Montessori based learning structure.
Mm-hmm.
Because first of all, like something that I'm quick to understand a concept. I don't do well when that concept has to be taught ad nauseum for 40 to
Mm-hmm.
60 minutes. Like I'm done. I've already tuned you out. I'm on to the next thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it, you know, the Montessori, it's very similar. Like by engaging children in adult tasks, they're picking up information, and we talk at kids for 6.5 hours and they are required to stay seated, and it's meant so that they can sit at a desk for 8 hours in adulthood. There's no other reason how, like, for that to be beneficial. Like, we have the scientific evidence of that, you know? So
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking that about when we were just talking about migrant farmers and cultural norms and, you know, the state getting involved in that. Now, while I do believe that labor laws are important, of course I do, for safety reasons and so that corporations wouldn't take more advantage of us than they already do. I still think that it just, I don't know, it just smacks of racism and capitalism when you decide that one family's way of making a living doesn't benefit children merely because it's not sitting at a desk for 6 to 8 hours a day. You know what I mean? Like, what are we doing to our 12 to 18-year-olds when they are doing homework until midnight every single night because we're so pushy about building our resumes up for good colleges? You know, what is the difference? How is that helping brain development? And I don't know. So yeah, I could go on for 4 hours to say, like, about this stuff, but it's so funny how we feign concern about, you know, brown children being out in the farms with their family, but not, you know, I don't know, not kids not getting enough sleep, not getting great nutrition, not having time to like be with their friends and family. That's not important. That means that your kid's successful here. So
yeah. Well, and I think, and certainly everybody, jump in if you want to on this. One of the distinctions I do see is, in the, whether it's Montessori or Emilio Reggio, it is child-centered, and it's like, it's based on fostering children's curiosity and their exploration, right? Like they get intrigued with something, they explore, they follow it through, they have the latitude to do that exploration, and it's very child-centered. Whereas child labor is not necessarily child-centered. So, that I think is one of the distinctions that is good to make, when thinking about like what it's still a cultural difference potentially, but like, what is the basis that we're looking at those cultural differences through? Is it something to really benefit the children? And if we really think that being like child-centered and having them explore and everything is good, then yes, why aren't all children encouraged to do that, right? So that Sarah doesn't have to homeschool.
well, I certainly don't agree with kids cleaning out machinery. I don't
No, I
want to
didn't think
take
you
it that
did.
far. Right. But
Yeah.
I do think also, like, just taking it a little bit further instead of it, it doesn't just have to be about learning either. It can also be about participating in your family unit and,
Mhm.
assisting the family unit. Like, that is learning. That is that is being responsible for your community. That is fostering a reciprocal relationship. So obviously, no 16 hours in the fields for my 5-year-old while also cleaning out machinery afterwards. But definitely, like, we have a system here. I'll be at a smaller one, and my kids are required to pull their weight because we're working together, And so I also don't get on that whole like American idea of like, we live for our kids. We sacrifice ourselves for our kids. Kids everything, kids everything, kids everything. We don't want to be too kid centric. And I really believe that. I think like we somehow need the pendulum to stay here. It's gone one way and then the other way, and we can't seem to stop it in a reasonable section. But I wanted to make it clear to the class that I'm certainly not advocating for unsafe.
No, we didn't think you were. Absolutely not.
Okay.
No. And I'm thinking like, I think that's a really important distinction to make. Like when I'm saying kid-centric, I'm really contrasting that with capitalism-centric. And centering the needs of a capitalist economic system to train, like you say, train people to sit at desks for 8 hours or 10 hours or 14 hours or things like that, which really does require kind of stamping out curiosity and anything that's deviant from the norm, whatever the norm is, and that sort of thing. And now somebody said something in the chat that looked really interesting, and I lost it. Sarah has questions. Would you please? Hi, the dog wants to say hello.
Oh, who is that?
So this is Luna.
Oh,
our lovely Luna, who's like, I want night snacks. They were due at 8:30. And you're not getting any for another 15 minutes. So go play with the cat.
I think like to kind of piggyback on Sarah's point, I really was getting into the community food security concept in the cultivating food justice because I think when I've seen discussions of food security play out regularly in my experience, they're very much like let's just give people food who are in a position of food insecurity. And obviously that's great, but also it doesn't always solve it certainly doesn't solve the problem, but it also doesn't necessarily consider some of the factors that they discuss, like what is culturally acceptable and is that still putting like too much individual emphasis rather than community oriented problem solving into the mix, I guess. Words are hard tonight, sorry. But
yeah, no, that is a great statement of the tension around food insecurity, which is like people are hungry right now and you need a band-aid. And if we don't fix systems, people are going to just be hungry again tomorrow. And it's unfortunate that actually Poppendieck has a great book called, I think it's called Sweet Charity, about how much there's kind of a charity industrial system that maintains these systems that just require ongoing sort of charitable contribution and alms and stuff like that, instead of turning around and trying to work on the longstanding problems and fix the systems. Like people are really good at the short-term band-aids, and we suck at the long-term systems, which is by way of noting, did you see that one of the things you can do in this module is read the Farm Bill? Have you looked at the Farm Bill? It's about 100 pages long, isn't it? It's really long, just to warn you. But it's really exciting to read it. And I really encourage people to do that because it's an incredible piece of legislation that, among other things, funds SNAP, which is not necessarily what people suspect when they think Farm Bill. And so that's why I put it in here, because if you care about supplemental nutrition programs and stuff like that, the Farm Bill is the thing to read. So, okay, that's my little soapbox about that. Getting off that. Nicole, how are you doing? We have not heard from you too much yet. Want to give you a chance to get a word in edgewise here.
I'm trying to play catch up. I honestly, I'm not gonna lie, I haven't really started this week's yet. I was going through a lot of personal things and had a broken cell phone as of Tuesday where it overheated and I had to go get a new one. So technology and me are not friends.
No,
And it
no.
took 2 days to like reset a new phone because I got locked out of the brand new phone an hour after getting it because it decided to reboot itself.
Oh my
So
God.
that was a fun thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well, you're doing well to be here with us. So
I've had a week
awesome.
and it's only been a few days.
Does any of this is any of this sparking an idea about like, oh, when I get back to the module, I might want to start here or something like that?
Yeah. Definitely like talking about the Farm Bill and stuff like that. I've been listening in and just it's so much going on with the chemicals. It's like I say this almost every week with every module where it's like I feel like I can't eat or drink anything anymore, where I'm just like gonna end up perishing away because I'm afraid to eat certain foods now. And the sugar, like I was sitting here trying not to laugh because talking about do you put sugar in your cornbread? I'm like, I have a sugar addiction, so I put sugar in just about every damn thing. So of course I like it sweet, but I'm not opposed to savory. I might give that a chance, but just I can't believe how much chemical and pesticide is in everything. And I'm like, how are we possibly eating this stuff?
Yeah.
But, it's like, and then if you can't afford to have your own garden and make like grow your own produce, like how do you live? How do you survive? you know, what's really safe to eat, you know? And so it's just so many things
Yeah,
on top
well,
of
and
it.
I'm gonna say again, find your farmers markets, even the
Mhm.
winter markets, because you can talk to people and you can express your concerns about these things, and they can tell you what's going
Mhm.
on with their produce, and or like if it's honey, you can talk to them about the bees and how
Mhm.
that's going, and talk if you're buying meat, you can talk about how the animals are pastured and raised and even slaughtered, and like it just it's a good start just to find ways that you can talk to people about what this stuff is that you're looking at and where it came from. And
Mhm.
again, one of the things about the women working the NAFTA food chain thing is the like, oh my God, stuff has come from so far away. um I don't know about where you guys are, but up here, like avocados are everywhere and they're on sale right now and everything. Well, they are not coming from Western Massachusetts, I'll tell you that.
Mhm.
Right? They're probably coming from Mexico.
Mhm.
Maybe even southern Mexico. So they're coming a ways to get here.
Um, I have a quick question. Is there any way to test soil without hiring like an outside agency if you want to do your own gardening? I've been looking into like other options, other above ground options to make sure that the soil is clean, but
Like
there's
containers.
significant risk with that too, right? Like we're in an area with a crap ton of lead in the soil. And then there's
Hmm.
also, I know New Haven specifically is loaded with like all the dry cleaners from the last 100 years pouring their chemicals into the soil. And like,
Hmm.
I want to participate, but also, and I do buy from farmers markets and local farms, but how do we even know that those are being grown in safe places? Like,
Yeah, well, you can ask them about their soil tests. um who's Susie Huminski?
She's actually been at Southern a long time. I had her as a professor when I was an undergrad back in like 2011, but she is currently I don't remember what her title is, but she works with the Office of Sustainability in some format.
Hmm.
But I remember at one point I had asked her about it, and I think that there's a lab in New Haven that will test your soil for free or for a very nominal fee. Um,
Is it
so
cooperative extension?
hmm,
Is it a
There's the
cooperative extension lab?
there's the Connecticut
maybe,
Agricultural Center on Prospect Street near Albertus Magnus.
yeah,
I think
yeah, maybe. It's been so a couple years, so I just don't
Mhm.
remember offhand. But I know she had a connection where, um, like she had talked about like they will test your soil. They were doing like kind of like urban farming stuff in the
Hmm.
area in partnership. And so Southern has community garden and she's involved in that as well. So she's pretty knowledgeable. And as far as I know, she's still at Southern. I haven't connected with her in the last couple of years, but
Yeah. And a lot of
yeah,
times, it is like cooperative extension is involved in things like that, and they're out there, not only training people about how to do sustainable gardening and stuff, but teaching about soil quality and that sort of thing. So that sounds like there's a couple good resources there, um, for sure. Yeah, I mean, you should be able to get that done. And then there's container gardening too. Um, you
that's
know,
what I was referring to. Yeah, I was thinking
yeah.
about the container gardening, but that can get expensive too.
Oh yeah,
Like it's
containers,
not,
soil. Yep.
yeah,
Um,
the containers are, I mean, they're affordable if you're going to do something small, but like if I really wanted to, have the girls get involved and like actually eat from this garden,
mhm.
it's pricey. And I'm willing to do it. It's just, would take longer that way.
Yeah, I think container gardening is actually really good for apartments as long as you're not in a situation where, this is KQ's question. If you're not in a situation where your landlord and policies forbid it, um, which is a really unfortunate thing that I know was happening in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. My students were telling me about living in apartments or rental housing where they were not allowed to grow anything for food in their places, which I think should be illegal, frankly. So as long as you're not in that situation, then I actually think container gardening is really good for people in apartments because you can do quite a lot in a fairly limited space. You can grow lettuce in a small little container and it will, keep regenerating. You pick it and leave some leaves and it will keep making more. Some things that have extended growing seasons that can be hard in New England, like green peppers and things like that. You're actually going to have the time for them to grow if they're in a container inside. Other things are hard, like carrots, right? Carrots are, you can try to get varieties that are like short, stumpy little carrots, so you don't need a really deep container, but some carrots are hard to do inside. And generally that would not be the first thing I would try. But tomatoes would be great, right? And then basil. And so, now you get tomatoes, you got basil, like you're halfway to a really good Italian dish there.
I was about to say, is that some mozzarella to have caprese?
Yeah, exactly. Make some homemade bread. Oh my God, I still owe you recipes, Nicole. All right, what is wrong with your teacher this semester? This is not good. I'm brain dead. It's not good. Yeah, so good. Get some soil testing.
I
Water
have
testing.
the Connecticut Agricultural Experiment Station, the one near Albertus Magnus. You want the phone number? I got it right here.
Oh, cool.
Let's see.
Thanks, Renee.
It's 203-974-8500. It's actually where my parents worked and they met.
Oh, wow.
Cool.
Thank you.
So it's been there a very, very long time.
Very
And
cool.
we sell some really good soil at Ocean State Job Lot. It's organic and it's got worm casings in it. And people are really buying it. It's $8 a bag.
You probably have some good containers too, if I remember what I've
yeah.
seen in the past.
Really?
Yeah, we got the Soilite for seedling. There's seeds for seedlings. It's like $3. There's a
Which one are you at? Which one do you work at?
Clinton.
Oh, okay. Okay. There's
Yeah.
one near me, I think. I think it's still there. Orange?
There's the one that one might have closed. It's towards Milford, near the Milford Mall where the bed and bath was. That's their new store.
So it's good to remember that this stuff is getting stocked at Ocean State already.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's time for me to take a run and think about, I bought fabric bags last year. I started stuff in Walmart buckets that somebody gave me, and I didn't drill holes in them so they didn't drain, and it was so wet up here that I basically had buckets of tomatoes in water, which would be great if I was trying to do hydroponics, but in this case didn't work particularly well. So I moved to fabric bags, and things seem to like that better. So I'm probably going to be doing fabric bags this year.
Well, we don't sell it, but there's ways you can grow tomatoes that are hanging.
Yep.
I guess that hang, and those seem to grow very well from what I've seen.
Yep. Yeah. And actually, I think people do those in I mean, they're basically in something like a plastic grocery bag.
Yeah.
Like very similar to that.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then maybe just poke a few holes in to drain it a little bit so they don't get full of water.
That's an idea too.
Yeah. And then you can like hang them on the fence post or something like that. Yeah. I don't have a green thumb either, KQ, which is why all my tomatoes ended up in water last year. I generally do better with things growing outside than inside. But I'm Like start with a tomato plant, and I would say go someplace and get one that's already started even,
Yes.
so that
Mhm.
you've got a good head start.
Yeah, they sell them at Walmart. I
Yep.
have bought those.
And they also sell them at farmers markets in the spring. You can get all kinds of seedling, like started plants of lots of cool things at your local farmers market. So also our food co-op sells those in the spring too. It's